Hello and welcome to the Metrix training video. In this video we'll be going over some of the Metrix vocabulary that we use commonly and where you'll be encountering it in the software. So to start out, this is the screen that you'll be seeing when you open your project for the first time. I've got the GulfMed project open, which is a sample project that we include with Metrix so you can look over what a project should look like. To start out, over here on the left hand side is what we refer to as the tree structure. It's what you're going to use to navigate between all of your project level, site level, area level, and meter level. So to start out, if you look at your meter, you're going to go to the register. That's where all of your bill entry is going to take place. I'll be running through all of these terms on this page just so you understand what should be going in each column. The first thing to look at is the period end date. That's the last day that your bill encompasses. So this bill here would extend from March 15th through April 16th. The next column is your total cost. You can either manually enter that or have it automatically calculated by selecting this button up here. The next is the miscellaneous column. It's where you'll be putting any customer charges or non-usage related costs. The next column is credit. It's where you'll be putting anything the utility company is giving back to you. You'll want that number to be negative if it's actually a credit towards your customer. Next up is tax. That one's fairly self-explanatory. The next couple columns are your usage and demand columns. As you can see up here, we've got 2 consumption and 1 demand cost included in this, and they've all got detailed cost, which means that you've got the cost associated with that charge itself. So, for example, in this case we have on-peak and off-peak distribution costs and on-peak demand costs. This column right here, on-peak distribution, is your kilowatt hour charge. That is your usage, and it's in terms of energy. So that could be kilowatt hours, or therms, or BTUs. The column directly to its left is the cost associated with that. So in this bill, $30,977 were charged for the use of 541,000 kilowatt hours. In the next one we have your off-peak. That's if you're using time of use periods. Most of the time you won't be, and most of the time you'll put all of your usage into on-peak distribution. Next up is demand over here. This is in terms of power. That could be kilowatts, therms per hour, or BTU per hour, or anything like that. And directly to its left is the cost directly associated with that. This final column is only appearing because I have time of use periods for consumption, and it is just the sum of my on-peak and off-peak distribution usage. There's also 2 more options for columns that you could have selected. Up here is supply and power factor. These are just more detailed charges that might appear on your bill. You won't commonly need to use them, but you can if you find that you need a space for an additional charge. Next up, the most commonly used term in Metrix is the word baseline. You'll find that on your tuning tab. The baseline is a regression correlating your base year to the variables of your choosing. These could be cooling degree days, heating degree days, or some user-created variable. What this does is it accounts for the effect of that variable for each year. Weather is the most common, but occupancy and school schedules are also commonly used. So as you can see here, this green line is your baseline. If you look at the scenario inspection, the black line is connecting your actual usage, which are these blue dots, and the green line is the baseline. The baseline effectively corresponds to how much energy you would have used during the current year if you had continued the trends established during your base year. The base year is generally your first year of data. You've set that in your tuning tab. Typically you want to choose the first year before you've done any retrofits to your facility. You should try to pick a time where there were no abnormal occupancy schedules or construction going on, because this is going to establish how much energy your facility should be using in a typical year, and it's what you're going to use to track savings. The most common variable that you'll use for tuning is weather, which comes in the form of heating and cooling degree days. For this meter, I've got it tuned to cooling degree days, and cooling degree days are a measure of the difference between your cooling balance point and the daily average temperature. The equation for cooling degree days is the average daily temperature minus your cooling balance point. The average daily temperature is an average of the high and low temperature for the day. Cooling degree days are always positive, so if your average temperature is lower than your balance point, you'll have 0 cooling degree days for that day. You can find your cooling degree days for each billing period by clicking this button here, and this is the sum of the total amount of cooling degree days in your billing period. Heating degree days are basically the same as cooling degree days, but the equation is the balance point minus the average temperature, and again that number will always be positive. Another term that we hear thrown around in metrics is SimActual. What that is, up here on your SimActual tab, is a comparison of your actual usage with your calculated costs associated with it. These costs are calculated using whatever cost calculation method that you've chosen for metrics to use, which you can find on the Meter Setup tab over here. A rate is the utility rate schedule, which is the billing algorithm that determines how much your usage is going to cost. The process of modeling a rate and the various rate modeling methods are going to be gone over a little bit more detail in a later video. So that covers all of the basic metrics vocabulary. You'll probably hear some more words later, but that's basically the gist of what you need to know to get metrics up and running, and the most commonly used terms in metrics.